Hey, it's Brett, and this is Brett and Some Books. Today we're continuing The Plot to Seize the White House by Jules Archer, and this is Chapter 3 of Part 3. Butler found himself fascinated by McGuire, suspecting that the bond salesman might be playing some kind of shrewd con game with Clark, using his contact with Butler as a lever with which to pry money out of the alarmed millionaire. I began to get the idea that he was using Clark, to pull money out of Clark by frightening him about his $30 million, and then he was coming to me, and then I would go back and tell Clark, I have been to see Butler, and he will go along if you will give me $5,000 more. In other words, I could see him working both ends against the middle and making a sucker out of Clark. However, if Clark wanted to get rid of his money, it was none of my business. Now, McGuire was a very cagey individual. He always approaches everything from afar. He's a really very nice, plausible fellow. But I gather, after the association with him, that due to this wound in his head, he is a little inconsistent, a little flighty. He's being used too, but I do not think Clark is using him. My impression is that Murphy uses him, and he uses Clark because Clark has the money. During McGuire's trip to Europe, Butler testified the bond salesman had sent him a postcard from Nice in February 1934, and a short note later from Berlin, both of the having a wonderful time variety. Then, after McGuire's return, upon his urging to see Butler on a matter of the utmost importance, they had met in the empty restaurant of Philadelphia's Bellevue Hotel on August 22nd, 1934. He told me all about his trip to Europe. He said, I went abroad to study the part that the veteran plays in the various setups of the governments that they have abroad. I went to Italy for 2 or 3 months and studied the position that the veterans of Italy occupy in the fascist setup of government, and I discovered that they are the background of Mussolini. They keep them on the payrolls in various ways and keep them contented and happy, and they are his real backbone, the force on which he may depend in case of trouble to sustain him. But that setup would not suit us at all. The soldiers of America would not like that. I then went to Germany to see what Hitler was doing, and his whole strength lies in organizations of soldiers, too. But that would not do. I looked into the Russian business. I found that the use of the soldiers over there would never appeal to our men. Then I went to France and I found just exactly the organization we are going to have. It is an organization of super soldiers. He gave me the French name for it, and I do not recall what it is. I could never have pronounced it anyhow. But I do know that it is a super organization of members of all the other soldiers' organizations of France, composed of non-commissioned officers and officers. He told me they had about 500,000, and that each one was a leader of 10 others, so that it gave them 5 million votes. And he said, now that is our idea here in America, to get up an organization of that kind. Investigators for the McCormick-Dickstein Committee were unable to recover a report on this French superorganization, the Croix de Foi, that McGuire had written about to Robert S. Clark and Clark's attorney, Albert Grant Christmas, from France on March 6, 1934. I had a very interesting talk last evening with a man who is quite well up on affairs, and he seems to be of the opinion that the Croix de Foi will be very patriotic during this crisis and will take the wage cuts or be moving spirit in the veterans to accept the cuts. Therefore, they will, in all probability, be in opposition to the socialists and functionaries. The general spirit among the functionaries seems to be that the correct way to regain recovery is to spend more money and increase wages rather than to put more people out of work and cut salaries. The Croix de Foix is getting a great number of new recruits, and I recently attended a meeting of this organization and was quite impressed with the type of men belonging. These fellows are interested only in the salvation of France, and I feel sure that the country could not be in better hands because they are not politicians. They are a cross-section of the best people of the country from all walks of life, people who gave their all between 1914 and 1918 that France might be saved. And I feel sure that if a crucial test ever comes to the Republic, that these men will be the bulwark upon which France will be saved. During their meeting in Philadelphia, Butler testified, Maguire had revealed the plans of his group to develop an American Croix de Foix. I said, "What do you want to do with it when we get it up?" "Well," he said, "we want to support the president." I said, "The president does not need the support of that kind of an organization. Since when did you become a supporter of the president? The last time I talked to you, you were against him." He said, "Well, he's going to go along with us now." "Is he?" "Yes." "Well, what are you going to do with these men? Suppose you get these 500,000 men in America." "Well," he said, "they will be the support of the president." I said, "The president has got the whole American people. Why does he want them?" He said, "Don't you understand the setup has got to be changed a little bit? He has got to have more money. There is not any more money to give him. 80% of the money is now in government bonds, and he cannot keep this racket up much longer. He has either got to get more money out of us, or he has got to change the method of financing the government. And we are going to see to it that he does not change that method. He will not change it." I said, "The idea of this great group of soldiers, then, is to sort of frighten him, is it?" No, not to frighten him. This is to sustain him when others assault him." I said, "Well, I do not know about that. How would the president explain it?" He said, "He will not necessarily have to explain it, because we are going to help him out. Now, did it ever occur to you that the president is overworked? We might have an assistant president, somebody to take the blame, and if things do not work out, he can drop him." He went on to say that it did not take any constitutional change to authorize another cabinet official, somebody to take over the details of the office, to take them off the president's shoulders. He mentioned that the position would be a secretary of general affairs, a sort of super secretary. A secretary of general affairs? That is the term used by him, or at least a secretary of general welfare. I cannot recall which. Shit. I came out of the interview with that name in my head. I got that idea from talking to both of them. You see, Maguire and Clark. They had both talked about the same kind of relief that ought to be given the president, and he, Maguire, said, "You know, the American people will swallow that. We have got the newspapers. We will start a campaign that the president's health is failing. Everyone can tell that by looking at him, and the dumb American people will fall for it in a second." And I could see it. They had the sympathy racket, that they were going to have somebody take the patronage off his shoulders, and take all the worries and details off his shoulders. And then he will be like the president of France. Now, I cannot recall which one of these fellows told me about the rule of succession, about the Secretary of State becoming president when the vice president is eliminated. There was something said in one of the conversations that I had, that the president's health was bad and he might resign, and that Vice President Garner did not want it anyhow, and this super secretary would take the place of the Secretary of State, and
in the order of succession would become president. That was the idea.
In corroborative testimony, Paul Comley French described what McGuire had told him about conspirators' plans. During the course of the conversation, he continually discussed the need of a man on a white horse, as he called it, a dictator who would come galloping on his white horse. He said that was the only way, either through the threat of armed force or the delegation of power, and to use a group of organized veterans to save his capitalistic system. He warmed up considerably after we got underway, and he said, "We might go along with Roosevelt and then do with him what Mussolini did with the King of Italy. It fits with what he told the general, why we would have a Secretary of General Affairs, and if Roosevelt played ball, swell. If he did not, they would push him out." He expressed the belief that at least half the American Legion and the veterans of foreign wars would follow the general if he would announce such a plan. In censored testimony, Butler revealed that McGuire had implicated General Hugh Johnson, head of the NRA, as Roosevelt's own choice to become an assistant president.
He said that is what Roosevelt was building up Hugh Johnson for. Hugh Johnson talked too damn much and got him into a hole, and he's going to fire him in the next 3 or 4 weeks. I said, "How do you know all this?" "Oh," he said, "we are in with him all the time. We know what is going to happen."
After having revealed the plans of the plotters, Butler testified McGuire had then bluntly asked the general to be the man on a white horse they were looking for.
He said, "Now what about this superorganization? Would you be interested in heading it?" I said, "I am interested in it, but I do not know about heading it. I am very greatly interested in it because, you know, Jerry, my interest, my one hobby, is maintaining a democracy. If you get these 500,000 soldiers advocating anything smelling of fascism, I am going to get 500,000 more and lick the hell out of you, and we will have a real war right at home. You know that." "Oh no, we do not want that. We want to ease up on the president." "Yes, and you will put somebody in there you can run. Is that the idea? The president will go around and christen babies and dedicate bridges and kiss children. Mr. Roosevelt will never agree to that himself." "Oh, yes, he will. He will agree to that." I said, "I do not believe he will." I said, "Don't you know that this will cost money, that what you were talking about?" He says, "Yes, we have got $3 million to start with on the line, and we can get $300 million if we need it." "Who is going to put all that money up?" "Well," he said, "you heard Clark tell you he was willing to put up $15 million to save the other $15 million.
Butler had then probed for particulars of the cabal's plan for organizing their projected military superorganization.
"How are you going to care for all these men?" He said, "Well, the government will not give them pensions or anything of that kind, but we will give it to them. We will give privates $10 a month and destitute captains $35. We will get them all right. It will cost you a lot of money to do that." He said, "We will only have to do that for a year, and then everything will be all right again." He said that they had this money to spend on it, and he wanted to know again if I would head it. I said, "No, I am interested in it, but I will not head it."
Seeking to persuade him to change his mind, Butler testified McGuire had sought to impress with him the importance of the interests who were involved in the plot.
He said, "When I was in Paris, my headquarters were Morgan and Hodges. We had a meeting over there. I might as well tell you that our group is for you, for the head of the organization. Morgan and Hodges are against you. The Morgan interests say that you cannot be trusted, that you will be too radical and so forth, and you are too much on the side of the little fellow. You cannot be trusted. They do not want you, but our group tells them that you are the only fellow in America who can get the soldiers together. They say, yes, but he will get them together and go in the wrong way. That is what they say if you take charge of them.
According to McGuire, Butler testified, the Morgan interest preferred other noted military figures as head of the projected Veterans Army. Discussion of the choices was also eliminated from the published version of the hearings.
McGuire said, they are for Douglas MacArthur as the head of it. Douglas MacArthur's term expires in November, and if he is not reappointed, it's to be presumed that he will be disappointed and sore when they are forgetting him to head it. I said, I do not think that you will get the soldiers to follow him, Jerry. He is in bad odor, because he put on a uniform with medals to march down the street in Washington. I know the soldiers. Well then, we will get Hanford McNider. They want either MacArthur or McNider. I said, McNider won't do it either. He will not get the soldiers to follow him because he has been opposed to the bonus. Yes, but we will have him in charge. And it is interesting to note that 3 weeks later, after this conversation, McNider changed and turned around for the bonus. It is interesting to note that. McGuire said, there is going to be a big quarrel over the reappointment of MacArthur. You watch the president reappoint him. He's going to go right, and if he does not reappoint him, he's going to go left. I have been watching with a great deal of interest this quarrel over his reappointment to see how it comes out. McGuire said, you know as well as I do that MacArthur is Stotesbury's son-in-law in Philadelphia. Morgan's representative in Philadelphia. You just see how it goes, and if I'm not telling the truth. I noticed that McNider turned around for the bonus, and that there was a row over the reappointment of MacArthur.